What is good, everybody? Welcome into episode 10 of Catch and Counter. And boy, do we have a big show for you guys today. Nibs has been on the hop streak. I know I've been getting a lot of DMs from fans of the show. They've been asking me, Nibs, they've been wanting to know what's your pound for pound list. They were upset that, last week we didn't kind of get quite to it, but you've been on a hot streak, Mr. I told you so. So we're going to give the fans what they want. We're going to give the pound for pound list in the award show in a little bit. So just hold on a bit, everyone. I know I've been getting a lot of people dying to hear Nibs pound for pound list and my pound for pound list as well. Don't worry, that'll be pretty soon. We're going to get into these weekend's fights first, but Nibs, how we doing? How you feeling ahead of this episode 10? So we got the double digit mark, so we're on a slow roll up in this game for sure.
Hey man, I'm feeling great. I mean, it's catch and counter, baby. The authority and all things, but fuck with us or fuck off. So let's get it.
Let's get. I think we might have to clip that and make it an intro or something like that at some point too. I like the flow of that. So we'll get into this fight first. And one guy who does a lot of catching and countering, especially I didn't realize he did as much of it, but it's Tszyu. So we'll get into his fight first. He's fighting Brian Mendoza tomorrow night on Showtime in Australia. And this is, I think, the definition of a fight fan's fight. Mendoza and Tszyu are two guys who have really, really grown on me. I had questions about both guys, but they keep chopping guys down and they keep doing their thing. So it's a great fight. I do have to favor Tszyu. I'd be kind of shocked. Now, here's the thing. I'm saying I'd be kind of shocked if Mendoza wins, but I've also said that before. So I want to be careful. I don't want to count Mendoza out or anything like that, but I just think Tszyu is the absolute truth, and I do think he gets it done. So what's your first thoughts on kind of just this matchup and where both guys are in this point? And the fact that now in 154, this could be kind of the guy if Jamel doesn't come back down to the division.
So I can't say that you can count Mendoza out because he's a live dog. He can scrap, but this is not Fandora, right? Tim Tszyu is a whole different beast.
Mm-hmm.
He's on a different level, and I think this is an easy dub for him. To be honest with you, excuse me, against a guy who's actually really good. You know what I mean? But really good and great. There's a there's levels to this game for a reason, baby. Tim Tszyu easily handles him and probably moves on to Charlo next if Charlo wants that smoke, if or when he goes back down to 154, and then we get the big fight we all want. But I don't see an avenue, at least in my mind, where Mendoza wins this fight unless he turns it into a snoozer and catches Tszyu slipping. Maybe, and I don't think Tzew's the kind of guy who's just going to underestimate his opponent too
Mm-hmm.
much. But unless he can lull him to sleep and catch him slipping like he did for Andorra, which I don't see happening, this should be an easy, pretty easy match.
Yeah.
So I got Tszyu by KO8.
Yeah, I do too. I think somewhere in the back half, the mid to like round 6 to 10, somewhere in there, he kind of starts to wear him down. I think he could get him out of there. But as you said, I'm still picking Zoo also. But I said it in the comments on the Monday show. But if Brian Mendoza wins this fight, I swear to God, I don't care who he fights. I'm never picking against him going forward. He could move up to fight Canelo and shit. I'd have to pick him because at this point he would just kind of keep proving us wrong. But the one thing I did have written down here for a note is you mentioned it too. Is I think for Mendoza it comes down to can he catch Tszyu like he did Fundora? Now Tim does square up at times a bit. We saw against Terrell Goucher when Goucher knocked him down in the first round, but I think he's tightened up his defense since then. And Tim is someone who he kind of at first just he was the kind of guy who I thought was just straight up and down, no special effects. But the more that I watch him, the more I realize he does a great job of cutting the ring off, and he's got a very underrated boxing IQ. Tony Harrison spoke on when he fought him that Tim's counterpunching and reaction time, his timing, all those things were things that he kind of underestimated and things I hadn't seen about him because I don't think he had to really use those things against some of the lower level opposition. But when you saw him in with Tony Harrison, Goucher, Ocampo last time out, I think you're starting to see he's getting better each and every fight. And I think he's a lot closer to a complete fighter than I ever thought he was before.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, everything about Tim Tszyu's game has improved every time I've watched him, no matter what the competition is. And I think that's because, unlike a lot of these other guys, he's very active. Tim
Mm-hmm.
Tszyu isn't a let me sit around and wait for this other guy to come along, right? Kind of fighter. He's a fighter where he's saying, I need that work. Let me get in here and fight somebody. He could have very well, and I don't think most people would have given him shit for it. He could have said, okay, I'll wait for Charlo to get done
Mm-hmm.
with Canelo and see what happens there. No, he said, let me get a fight. I'm a fighter. Let me do that. And I think that, iron sharpens iron. You need to get in there with, a guy that's coming to win, not just, a stay busy fight, but a guy who's actually coming in there to beat you and hone your skills and get better. You see him slipping punches better. You see him rolling with punches a little bit better. His footwork has gotten way better since the first time I watched him years ago. So, everything about his game I'm impressed with. And that's why I think this is going to be a much easier fight for him than even his last fight, because I think Mendoza's got one thing smoking, right? And he does it pretty good, but you can't be one dimensional against Tszyu.
No, you can't at all. And I think, as you said, it's got the recipe for a fight that could, I think, break out into a firefight too. And I'm not sure. I think that's Mendoza's best chance to win, but it's also he's gonna have to walk through hell to get there. And he did it against Fundora, but I also think that Tszyu is a much more. First of all, he's more defensively sound than Fundora was, and he's got just a better way about going about things, as we said, with his timing and the way he doesn't leave himself as open as Fundora does. And it's just a whole different stylistic approach. So that's Mendoza's chance of victory, is I think mucking it up and getting inside. But as I said, that's also the recipe for Tszyu to kind of beat him down and break him down. And I think that's what will happen. So I got Tszyu, the late half stoppage. It seems like you have the same thing. And be excited to see what happens for him. A little foreshadowing is he will be mentioned, I believe, in some of these possible awards in the running for some of these things that we get into a little later on. So stay tuned for that, as we're going to break down, as I said, our pound for pound list and also just front runners for awards. So nothing's finalized, as you guys know. We still got a few more big fights coming up, so things can change. But just kind of throw some names out there to make you guys think a little bit going forward. But there's also a fight card on ESPN tomorrow night. It's a middleweight unification. Now, this is no shade to both guys, but to me, I think it might be the least typed unification fight that I've maybe ever seen. I mean, honestly, though, like it just doesn't have a big fight feel at all. So Janibek Alim Hanala is fighting Vincenzo Gualtieri. Gualtieri is from Germany. He's never fought in the United States, and he's also somebody who has never fought on network TV. So I think his last fight was on a YouTube stream in Germany. He beat Esquiva Falcao, who was an Olympian, who was a Brazilian, who top rank was behind, but he got it done. But for me, he's kind of too basic, up and down with no special effects. And I just think that Janibek with his pedigree will be too much for him. So not that we're going to touch much on this fight, but you have a prediction for this fight or just thoughts on the middleweight division as a whole?
Right after you said those names, probably 90% of the people watching this are fans had to Google both of those guys.
And hopefully they stayed on, because we got some good things coming. So we had to mention the names. So if they clicked off, I'm sorry, but it seems like they're all still here. But something we got to touch on for sure.
Here's the thing. I really could care less about what the outcome of this fight is, although I will say that I have Janibek winning, and I think he wins by knockout earlier. And I'd say probably 4 or 5, maybe at the least. But that goes to show you this is a big fight in the division, and nobody's talking about it. Why? Because 160 sucks right now. So it's open for the taking. I don't know how ESPN still has Triple G ranked, in the division. I mean, the boy ain't fought, and God knows, man.
It's because they want at least one name for people to recognize, I think.
Yeah, but how can you get excited for a guy who's basically in retirement? So, I think it's a good win for Janibek. I think it's a showcase for both fighters. I'm glad they're getting their money. I'll always root for that. But I think Janibek wins this going away.
Yeah, but I want to say shout out to everybody in the chat. Jesus, I was on the wrong tab, so I didn't see the comments at first, but saludos to you, Jesus. He said he's got Tim by split decision. Tim will get tested. Tim lacks defense. I mean, that's a fair thing. I think a lot of people have said. A lot of people also look at Degouche knocked down, and he was knocked down in the first round, but they also then kind of forget that after that, he tightened up the defense, and then he won every single round against Goucher after that. So these are very fair points, though. Tim is over aggressive, which Mendoza can capitalize on. And if it's Tszyu going out of his way, which I think he'll be a smart and he'll use his timing kind of like he did against Harrison. But if he does go balls to the wall and does go crazy, then it does give Mendoza an opportunity to land a big shot. And he's got Janibek by split decision. For me, I'm going to pick Janibek by knockout in this fight. Janibek, someone who's kind of up and down a bit. We saw against Danny Dignam and against Stephen Butler. He got those guys out of there inside of 2 rounds. Then against Denzel Bentley, who everyone expected him to get out of there inside of 2 rounds, he went the distance, was hit a bit, and he won the fight, rightfully so, but it was a closer decision than a lot of people thought. But I think that Janibek understands how important this fight is just for him and for the division. We've been waiting for. We talked about part of the reason why Elijah Garcia is getting a lot of hype is just that middleweight doesn't really have a huge name right now. So we're looking at those young guys who potentially maybe be that next star kind of coming up. And if you're Janibek, if you're looking to make a statement this weekend, because even if a lot of people don't know who Gualtieri is, they've never seen him fight, they'll say, okay, it's at least he's a champion and you're a champion, so it's a unification fight. And if you go out there and blow him out like I think he has the potential to do, I think he can kind of get some more hype around his name and maybe put himself as the face of the middleweight division for whatever that's worth right now.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, you have to be a real fan of the sport to even know who's really the shit at 160 right now.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'll be honest with you, most casual fans don't even know who these guys are.
Mm-hmm.
Most people have forgotten most people believe Triple G is retired at this point, right? So, even the biggest names in the division aren't even really there. And again, it leaves open opportunities for guys like Janibek. I'll be honest with you, I don't know much about his opponent, so that's why I'm picking him to win by knockout, just off of what I know off of him. But who knows? This could end up turning into a pretty good scrap. It might be one of those fights we're watching just because there's nothing else on, and fuck around and find out this is one of the best fights ever. So I'm hoping for that, but my expectations aren't that high.
Yeah, and Gualtieri, he's in an interesting spot right now because he is an undefeated middleweight champion, but a lot of people don't know who he is, and they're also completely counting him out of this fight. As I'm kind of one of those guys too, like I anticipate Janibek winning. Janibek's like a 15-1 favorite, so clearly Vegas thinks along the same lines, but that can sometimes be a dangerous dude. We've seen him talk about with Mendoza before, some of these other guys. Someone who has nothing to lose is the most dangerous guy in the sport sometimes too, and one punch can change anything. We've seen that with Mendoza and Fundora earlier this year. So that being said, I think Janibek, with his Olympic pedigree and with all the skill sets that he has, I think should be more than enough to beat Gualtieri, but we shall see. So last fight to touch on before we go over our the pound for pounds and the awards is the co-main event tomorrow night on ESPN, which is fight that's really intriguing to me. We have Keyshawn Davis in against Nahir Wu Albright. I believe it's a 10-round fight at 135. And Keyshawn's been doing a lot of talk this week. He's been talking about how he's going to have a highlight knockout. It's going to be all over Sports Center, all those kind of things. So do you think that's a realistic expectation for Keyshawn? And what are your thoughts on this fight? And is he kind of going, does he have to be careful looking too much for the knockout shot per se in this fight?
I think anytime you call your shot, you've got to now deliver on it, or you look silly, right? And then maybe he knows something we don't know about his opponent, et cetera, et cetera. So, do I think Keyshawn can do it though? Yeah, I mean, I'm 100% on Keyshawn's team. He's been impressive, bro. And I'd like to see him start fighting better guys quickly. You know what I mean? I think he could be a champion in his next couple of fights. Like I believe that much in his talent. Knockout that quick? I don't know, man. I mean, it took him 9 rounds to get rid of what Digit, whatever the dude's name is.
I was at that. That's the fight I was at too earlier this year. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, and that was a guy I thought he should have got out of there in a couple of rounds. You know what I'm saying? Durable guy, world-class fighter, but not on Keyshawn's level. And I think he, it took a little bit more time than I would have liked for him to get him out of there. Patera, like you said, unanimous decision. So I actually think this is going to go rounds. I don't think he's actually going to stop him, but I think he wins easy.
I think he does too. And one thing also is I think that, just as you said, that he shouldn't focus too much on getting the knockout because Wu Albright is somebody who he's got some losses. He lost his pro debut, which we've seen guys do and bounce back from. He lost to Jermaine Ortiz, and there's no shame in that Jermaine. We saw Jermaine put up a hell of a fight against Lomachenko too. But it's somebody who Keyshawn, I think, views as below him. But Wu he's a very crafty guy, and he knows what he's doing inside that ring. So if Keyshawn looks, which I don't think he will, I think that he's disciplined enough that he can separate the talking from the actual game plan. I think he'll go win there and methodically break Albright down. I don't think he'll get the stoppage either. I think he'll win like an 8-2, maybe 7-3, maybe 9-1, a competitive decision where he's the clear winner, but Wu has his moments at times. But I just think that it'll be interesting. Like, as you said, whenever you call your shot, you got to kind of act on it. But I don't think you want to go too far because I think that a unanimous decision over a guy like Nihir Albright is still a very good step in his progression.
Yeah, I mean, here's what you got to understand. You're in with a durable guy. You might not be the blue chip talent that you are, speaking to Davis, but he's a durable guy. So he's going to come in there and he's going to give you those rounds. Now Keyshawn is a killer. So if he can get in there and actually put some things together, you might be able to stop him. But the way I'm seeing it, it'll be a clear decision for him, but good work. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's exactly how I see it. So one thing I will say is that they've been moving Keyshawn pretty good, but I would say after this fight, if he handles business like we think he should, I think he's ready for that next step. Where even I'm cool with them fighting because Albright's a very solid opponent, but he's someone who did lose to Jermaine Ortiz. So instead of fighting the guy who lost to Jermaine Ortiz, I'd like to see him fight a guy like Jermaine Ortiz next time around. So they talked about him fighting on Heisman night, which is also another interesting thing is that would be a kind of a quick turnaround. To say that before this fight even happens means they believe he handles this with relative ease. But if he has a tough fight, maybe it's not Heisman night, maybe it's January, but he's ready at this point, I think. Rightfully so. You don't want to throw him in the deep waters right away, but he is older than Devin Haney. He's the same age as Keyshawn. I mean, he is Keyshawn, but the same age as Devin, Shakur, and Tszyu and all these guys. He's around their age. So I think that this point, he won a few fights to acclimate himself to the program. He's done that, but I think he's more than ready. And like I said, I want to see him in with not the guys who lost to the top guys, but the top guys, I think, at this point. Maybe not the top, but a Jermaine Ortiz guy would be a fantastic fight that I'd want to see next.
Yeah, I mean, like it or not, we're in the era now where if you're a blue chip prospect, this whole waiting until you're 20 fights in, to start, getting these better fights along the way, that era is dead. Around fight 10, once you get to around 10 to 12 fights, we want to see you in there with some real guys. And you want to keep pounding your chest saying you're the best in the world. Well, now's the time to start proving that shit.
Yeah, no, exactly. So it is now time. So we touched on those fights quickly. If anybody has any questions on undercards or anything like that, you can just shoot them and I can quickly go over them. But I mean, Richard Torres fights on the undercard. Duke Reagan fights on the undercard. Kelvin Davis, Keyshawn's brother, fights on the undercard. But they're all in fights that I expect them to win, especially Torres. I really hope that we can step him up at some point, too, because he's an Olympic silver medalist also. He doesn't need to be fighting guys that I could see that would be beat on club shows I've been around. So I think it's time to step him up, too. We talk about stepping up Keyshawn. Well, damn, they really got to step up Torres. I know it's heavyweights and this and that, but enough on that, though. Let's get into the nitty-gritty, what everybody wants to hear. And that is the pound for pound list. So we have a men's pound for pound list. We have a women's pound for pound list. I believe we said we'll go 10-1, not spend it crazy time, but we'll kind of just give our takes on why the guys are there and what we expect from them. But it's your choice. So is it ladies first? Do we go the women's pound for pound list and then touch on the men's? So it's up to you on that one.
Yeah, I think we give the ladies the respect of going first. We could probably move to their list a little bit quicker, no disrespect intended. But which and I really do mean that because me and Jack, we probably took more time with these women pound for pound lists than it took us to even come up with a list at all for the men. I mean, this pound for pound list for the women, Jesus, you know what I mean? So, but yeah, I mean, we'll let them go first, man. Tell me who you got, bro. What's going on?
Yeah.
What you got?
So one caveat I will put out, the thing that we had been speaking about to one particular fighter who has shown that they're without a doubt a pound for pound fighter, but not without a little bit of controversy as of recently. So Alicia Baumgardner, she did have an adverse finding after her most recent fight. Now, she has not been suspended yet, and her last fight is actually still a win. It has not been moved to a no contest yet. So I will show where I would have her in my rankings as of now if she's a clean fighter. If she does get removed from the rankings, I also have one more fighter who I will mention who would slide in at number 10 and we would bump everybody up. So that's kind of to be determined at this point. We are not specialists. We don't know exactly what went on, the dosage amount or anything like that. So that's up for the commissions to decide. But let's get going. So my one person who I have at 11 who would go to number 10 is Sandy Ryan from the UK. She just had a draw with Jessica McCaskill, but I think anybody who watched that fight know that she won that fight. Kind of reminds me of Chantel Cameron a bit, but she's kind of even more a bit of a go-getter. Chantel will be higher in my list. I think she might have more pure skills, but I think Sandy Ryan she's a tough fighter. She knows how to box and when to fight. So she is my honorable mention list. And I guess so I'll do 10 to 6, you'll do 10 to 6, and then we kind of keep moving that way. Is that how you think we should do it? Or I figured that.
Yes, sir.
Perfect. Let's get it. So I have her at 11. As of right now, she would become 10 if Baumgartner is removed from the list. But this number 10 person who I have right here, who a lot of people might be upset because they're not a champion. They've never been a champion, but it is Shadeja Green. And that's no ITR bias. The no Dakota's done work with her, but anybody who has seen her fight completely understands why I have her in the rankings where I do. She has legit knockout power for women. She reminds me, to me, she's the reincarnation for this generation of an Ann Wolfe. She has that legit one-punch knockout power. But she's not just a puncher either. She's got legit boxing skills. She very high boxing IQ. She knows what she's doing. She knows how to navigate herself in the ring. So I have her at number 10 right now. And shoot, if she gets some of these big fights we think she could, this will prove my point about her being a pound-for-pound fighter, and then some, as I think she could even rise up in the list. Number 9, I have Michaela Mayer. Not a champion right now, but I think she will become a champion at some point. She lost to Alicia Baumgartner, but I think that was a competitive enough fight where I keep her in the list. Olympian, good boxing pedigree. She knows she fights a lot more on the inside than I think people want with her size, but at the end of the day, she gets it done. Former unified champion. She's number 9. Natasha Jonas is number 8. She had great fights with Katie Taylor. She's moved up. She's now a champ at 154. She might fight a Chantel Cameron or someone at 147. So another 2-belt champion, Natasha Jonas, is number 8. And then number 7, I have Savannah Marshall. She lost to Clarissa Shields, but ain't no shame. And I'll just say it now. In my number 1, losing to my number 1 in pound-for-pound fighter right now, and maybe most likely of all time, Clarissa Shields. Ain't no shame in that. What does she do after that loss? She moves up. She beats Franchon Cruz to earn for the undisputed title of 168. So she loses an undisputed fight. Says, okay, you know what? I'll just go get undisputed in the weight class above. So to me, that's a pound-for-pound kind of move right there. Franchon was on my list. Savannah replaced her. And then I have Alicia Baumgartner at number 6. Undisputed champion right now. We got to see kind of how it goes going forward, what the commissions decide for her. But I will still have her number 6 right now. But if she either gets a suspension or that fight becomes a no contest, it would then be Sandy Ryan 10, Shadeja 9, Michaela Mayer 8, Tasha Jonas 7, and Savannah Marshall 6. So that's my 10 through 6. I know they've been wanting to hear yours. You've been on such a hot streak this year. They're probably even mad that I gave mine first, but we had to do it. But here we go. They're all waiting. They got the popcorn ready. So let's see. Mr. Nibs is 10 through 6 for his women's pound.
Anybody who's upset at Jack going first needs to be slapped. Anyway, look, I'll say this. Yeah, we talked about it. Pre-show. I had AB on my list literally up until yesterday. And I was going back and forth with it. And then finally, what made me take her off is, as I said, if she were a man and she tested dirty, I'd take her off my list, no questions. Wouldn't be any debate about it. So why do I keep putting her on there? It's because of her talent. I legitimately thought she was one of, if not, the best fighter in her division, and obviously one of the best fighters in the world. That dirty test, though, like it or love it, it nullifies a lot of things, because then you start to question, well, how long has she been doing that shit, right? Did she just mess up her cycle and maybe she's been juicing a long time and hiding it better, because she got caught with masking agents in addition to the steroid. That makes you go, wow. So then you have to call into, did she really beat Michaela, or did she have a little help? Did she really, get these belts, 100% on her own? She get a little help. She's a little bit more, physically strong looking than a lot of these other females. How much of that is, the juice? So took her off the list. I do have some honorable mentions. You mentioned her, Cruz Dezern. She was quite literally just a unified champion. Loses to Savannah Marshall, who's a pound for pound fighter. There's really then we got Harper. It was really close between her and my number 10, who I have there now. I was really close, and then Christina Hammer. I just like the way she fights. You know, if I'm being honest with you, she's not bad looking on the eyes. But you know, we can't take that into consideration. But my 10 through 6, I got Delphine Persoon, number 10.
That's an honorable mention for me too. That's a good one.
Yeah, she's got a resume a mile long. She's not currently a champion, but you know, I think she could, you know, give anybody in or around her weight class the business, if not win that fight. So I think you kind of have to put her in there. McCaskill, I love the way that she fights. You know, again, for me, it's, you know, not just, you know, do you have wins, but how you win. You know, so I like the way she gets down. I got Shadeja at number 8. You know, and I'm not making any qualms about it.
Nope.
If you got a problem with her being at number 8, put them in the comments. We'll read them. I promise.
Or just watch your fight. I'd say watch your fight, and you'll know.
Bro,
simple.
When you have legitimate power in the female boxing arena, that makes you dangerous. Period. You know what I mean? There are not a lot of power punchers in the female boxing world, and Shadeja is legit. Right, I think she's got some things to work on to crack the top 5, but she's right there because of the aforementioned dirty test by AB. I got Michaela at 7. I actually had her out of the list, to be honest with you, but taking that into consideration and her body of work, I kind of take that loss away. You know what I mean? Or I give her an asterisk for that. She makes it back on my list. I put her at 7. I got Savannah Marshall as currently at 6. But I'm gonna tell you, I was a coin flip between her and who I have at 5. And we'll go over that in a minute. But to me, again, what you pointed at, right? She took her L. She didn't cry about it. She didn't give any excuses. You know what Spence said? If I had one, I wouldn't give it to you. She didn't make any excuses about her loss. And what does she do? She pulls the ultimate G move and says, all right, cool. I just lost the undisputed, but, you know, like you said, I'm about to go over here and get these other straps against somebody who most people thought, you know, was the woman or man in her division. Hey, you know what? You know, again, I was hard pressed not to put her at number 5. But I think she's running things at the bottom 10. She's, you know, definitely on the list at number 6.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And I think a lot of these pound for pound lists, people might disagree in the orders, but I think one thing we had said pre-show too is that as long as you have relatively the same people in your pound for pound list, the order is so. I mean, from 1 to 10, you could almost put them in any order, but there's a lot of things that this person's at 9, they could be at 6, they could be at 4. The person who's at 2 could be at 7. Those things they're all up there. They're all fantastic fighters. So I want to shout out to Hybrid 25 US. Should appreciate the work from you guys. We appreciate the comment as well. So thank you. And then you guys can also drop we're going to get into our top 5 pound for pounds. Drop your top 5 pound for pounds for the women's. We'll get into the men's too, but we want to hear from the audience. So who do you guys have ranked in your pound for pound list as well?
To your point, like I really want to pound that home. Like, you know, outside of my top 2 on this list, I'm okay with you having anybody on my list in any order. You know what I mean? Like I couldn't argue anyone. Like, you know, if you had Shadeja number 10, or maybe you have her as an honorable mention, and you put Cruz DeZern, you know, like you have, I'm like, okay, cool. I get it. You know what I'm saying? Even the honorable mentions, it's like I got a pound for pound plus list. You know what I'm saying? So I really do think that, and this is a credit to the women, that they're so competitive that it almost feels like we should have a top 20 pound for pound list when it comes to them, because they are so competitive within each other and they're fighting each other. That's the beautiful part. Like, and they're dogs, all of them. I mean, So yeah, I mean, drive that home, bro. This is, in my opinion, an even more competitive list than the guys.
100%. And this is why we do go to the show, because you just took my damn talking point for my next thing, but it's all good. I'll let it slide. But it was a great point, and it's all good. I'll echo it again too. Is that I'd say my 1 and number 2 are kind of clear, but even top three, I'd say, are kind of clear. But four through five, I went back on very, very much. I was flip flopping a bit, but number five, I will have Sinise Estrada in there, and she's from number five. I'd say from 2 to 5, honestly. I think Clarissa is the clear number one, but 2 through 5, you could almost put in any order, and I'd be cool with it. But she's at number five. She's the champ at, I think, 105 right now. She's moved up to 112, and she's beaten Marlon Esparza. So that shows the pound for pound thing, that not only are you dominant in your weight class, but like in a way, or some of these other guys we'll get to on the men's side, okay, not much talent around your weight class. All right, move up and knock off the champions up there. And she's done exactly that. So number 5 on my list, if you want to have her at number 2, I'm cool with that. Number 4 is someone who was number 1 on a lot of people's list for a long time, is Katie Taylor. Someone who still, once again, she holds a win over somebody who I have higher up on this list now. That was a very close fight. We'll get into the weights and all those kind of things. But Katie Taylor has been in big fights. She's beaten the Delphine Persoon. She's just beaten a whole lot of world-class fighters. Currently still the undisputed lightweight champion of the world. She just lost to, and I'll break my number 3 there right now. She lost to my number 3, who is Chantel Cameron. But that was also, she was moving up to challenge for another undisputed title. So I don't hold that against her at all. I do think that she moved up in weight, but I think that the styles, that no matter what the weights were, I think Chantel's boxing would have done the job against her no matter what. So we'll get into the debate on the men's side too. Just I look at it as a styles thing also, along with the accolades. But I have Chantel Cameron number 3. Then I got the real deal, Amanda Serrano, at number 2. 7 division champion. I'll say it again. I know Nibs has said it before too. 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 division world champion. I don't care.
Definition of pound.
I know people will say, oh, some of them were big vacant belts, this and that. She's a pound for pound fighter at the end of the day. And she showed it in all these fights, her undisputed fight against Eric Cruz earlier this year. And then in one of the best fights that I've seen, maybe the best fight I've ever seen last year against Katie Taylor. A very, very close fight. I scored it a draw. Some people had Taylor winning. Some people had Serrano winning. And even though Taylor got the edge, I gave Serrano the edge on the pound for pound list just because she was moving up from 26. She moved up 2 weight classes, and I had it an even fight. So for me, if it's an even fight, I give the edge to the smaller fighter. So I give Serrano the edge for that. 7 division champion. I don't think I need to have to say any more about her. And I definitely don't need to say anything about my number 1, Clarissa Shields. To me, the greatest women's fighter of all time. She's got the wins over. She beat Savannah Marshall. She beat Christina Hammer. She beat Franchon Cruz in her damn pro debut. She's beaten Hannah Gabriels. She's beaten everyone you want to put in front of her. People can say, oh, well, she hasn't. One thing I've heard people say with her is that, oh, how great is she because she doesn't have a rival? And those same damn people were picking Savannah Marshall to beat her, picking Hammer to beat her. So no, I ain't gonna let them do it. We're not gonna do that and now say she doesn't have rivals. No, she had rivals. She showed there were levels between her and even these other pound for pound people. So at the end of the day, Clarissa Shields, far and away, number 1 pound for pound right now, and dare I say, of all time.
Bro, look, I mean, I'm going to get into my top 5, but I want to, again, put this into perspective. Christina Hammer's got 1 loss and 26 fights. Guess who that loss was to? You know, Cruz Dezern was, like you said, just recently a unified champion.
Undisputed champion. Mm-hmm.
Right, undisputed. We can go on and on and on. So, there's no need to even clarify. I know you are. We will, because that's what we do here. But come on. So my top 5 is a little different. I actually start off, and the reason I say this was a coin flip between Savannah Marshall and who I have at number 5 is strictly because Savannah's now undisputed, right? And I get Katie Taylor is, a unified champion. But the way she lost to Chantel Cameron, to me, I kind of had to knock her down a couple pegs. But Katie Taylor, I still respect her. Like you said, for my money, was in the best fight of all last year, period, with Serrano. I mean, that was good night. I mean, all action, round 1 through 10. Give it to me. You know what I mean? And I'd watch them fight again, and I'd pay a lot of money to see it. Like, that's classic shit. If there was a female version of Rocky, that would have been the ending. You know what I mean? Like that's how good that fight was. On that strength alone and the fact that she is still the champ. And again, daring to be great. You can't take her out of the top 10 or out of the top 5. So I got her at number 5. I think on the strength of her win over Katie Taylor, again, not just that you won, but how you won. I put Chantel Cameron at number 4. And strictly, again, based off of that one win. And then you look at the rest of her resume, right? The rest of her resume is impressive. But when you beat someone who most people had at number 2, I had her at number 3. Overall, pound for pound, this is someone who's, most people thought was going to come in there and wipe the floor with you, and you beat her that convincingly. I got to put you above her on the list. That's just the way it is. I know a lot of people are going to give me shit for this, and I know that you have her much further down on your list. I have Shanisha at number 3. And the reason I have her at number 3 is because of how dominant I think she is at her weight class. Yes, she's a much smaller, fighter, but there's really not too many people in or around her weight class I see fucking with her at all, right? And I like that she's got that dog in her. She doesn't have a high knockout rate, but she's got probably one of the the most lopsided wins I've ever seen. What was that, 7 seconds or some shit like that? Yeah, that was ridiculous. But you know what? She's very dominant. For me, if you're going to be a person who fights either in or around one particular weight class, if you're extremely dominant, that can get you high on my list. The top 2, I don't think I have to say their names, but again, just for the sake of doing it, I got Amanda Serrano at number 2. Again, you stole all my thunder, Jack. But look, there are very few men who have world titles, legit world titles, by the way, in 7 different weight classes. This is the only woman who's able to say that she's been able to accomplish that. And for those of you who nitpick some of those world title fights that she's won, let me put it to you this way. In consecutive fights, not consecutive years, but in consecutive fights, this woman won world titles in 3 different weight classes. There's no male boxer on the planet who can say they did that. Even Floyd, as good as he is, can't say, hey, I went from 140 to 147 and 154 and won a world title. And, oh, by the way, beat the guy there. Nobody can. Amanda Serrano is the only person on the planet Earth who can say that, all while wearing Jordans in the ring. And again, when it's not just the fact that she is winning, it's how she's winning. And a majority of her fights, she's had a couple of fights here and there. I think, again, more credit to her opponents being stronger than most people thought they were. She's been dominant, in her wins. The Katie Taylor fight, yes, she technically took an L. To me, there was no loser in that fight. I think no matter whether you have Serrano or Katie, winning it, I think both ladies won that night because it was just amazing. We as fans definitely won, but I think both ladies won that fight. It built up their stock, and again, makes them pound for pound champions. The number 1 is a no-brainer. This woman won 2 world titles, gold medals in the Olympics. The only fighter in recent memory to do that, right? I think, period, in boxing, right? If I'm not mistaken. 2 gold medals, and made them look easy. She came into the ranks of the professionals and has been in nothing but title fights. And she's been in nothing but exciting title fights. Her and Savannah Marshall had one of the fights, I'd love to see again. That was, good night. So, again, even though she's not got a high knockout rate, she's in good fights. She's dominating most of the fighters that they put in, almost all of the people that they put in front of her. And she's got more wins against other pound-for-pound fighters than anybody else, right? Like, we just go over those names, and you go, well, shit, she beat that person. How can you not have her above them? I think Clarissa Shields is going to be able to be the number 1 pound-for-pound female fighter as long as she wants to.
Couldn't have said it any better. And here's the stat to kind of piggyback off what you were saying about Serrano is that she fought in, let me get the exact date, September 8th, 2018. She won a vacant title at 140 pounds. January of 2019, she won a vacant title at 115 pounds. She went from 140 to 115. So I don't care their vacant titles. I don't even care who they're against. They were still quality opposition. But I mean, bro, come on now. 140 to 115. Nobody else is going to be able to do that. And that's why, like you said, Clarissa is number one. She's the queen without a doubt. But Amanda's right behind her, and rightfully so, in that number 2 spot.
For me personally, to me, Serrano is the best pound for pound fighter because literally, bro, that's ridiculous. Say that again. What were the weights?
She fought at 140. 140, and then the next fight 3 months later was at 115.
That doesn't even sound like a human being did that, bro. No. You won a world title at 140 and then came back down. Jesus Christ, bro. 115?
Yep.
To me, that is literally, if you look up pound for pound in a dictionary, there's a picture of Amanda Serrano, bro. I think, again, you have to give Clarissa her flowers because, representing your country in the Olympics the way that she has and doing it very well. She doesn't have, and here's another thing too, right? I want to point out, and I know a lot of people don't really think about this when it comes to the women's divisions. You don't have any problems with any of these women outside of the ring either. You don't hear any bullshit about them outside of the ring doing crazy, wild, dumb shit. I don't think any of them have OnlyFans or anything like that, right? So it's these women. These aren't just pretty faces, who are trying to make money on boxing, right? They're legit fighters in here, putting their lives on the line and giving us some of the best fights, period, across genders, no matter male or female. And I think that Clarissa Shields, you can't really do it better than she has, right? As quickly as she has. And I think that's why you have to have her number one. But, again, to your point, outside of the top two, her and Serrano, to me, are miles ahead of everybody else. Serrano on the resume. Jesus, she's like almost 50 fights in. She's got an impeccable resume. First ballot Hall of Famer, as far as I'm concerned, her and Clarissa. You can pretty much take, again, 10 through 3 and say, here's my order. And I'm like, all right, cool. Just don't fuck with the top two.
Exactly. And then my tiebreaker would always go to for that, where Serrano has won more titles and more weight classes, but it's just more of a hypothetical. But I think if they were the same exact size, I would pick Clarissa to outbox Amanda Serrano. So I think that would be kind of what the difference is. And just, I think she's a bit higher level. She doesn't get hit as much, those kind of things. So I think that's what leads into her being the number one for me.
I think this version of Serrano, yes. I think Serrano in her prime, because I think Serrano carries a little bit more power than Clarissa does. Obviously she got more knockouts. I think in her prime, and again, because you can't really count Amanda Serrano out at any weight class. Shit, 7 fucking weight class. But if her and Clarissa were both in their primes, fighting each other, and they were the same size and all that. Bro, it'd
be a hell of a fight.
To be honest with you, I don't right. Like that's some Ali Frazier type shit, bro. Like, you know what I mean? That's a dream fight we'll never see, but it's one of those where you're like, well, damn, I don't even know, because Amanda Serrano in her prime was unbeatable pretty much. And then the fact, again, you throw in the fact that she's got a little bit more power, but I do think that you're right that Clarissa's technical ability is, it's Mayweather-esque. As far as women is concerned, and I like that they both have that dog in them. Like neither one of those girls will back up. So I just think it would be, in a perfect world, probably in a draw. I think you're right. I think Clarissa edges it. Nobody gets knocked out. But I do think Serrano gives you that excitement because she can knock people out and stop her. But I think Clarissa's chin is just impeccable to this point. So we'll never know. But good Lord, would I love to see that shit.
Yeah, but we'll move on to the men's list now. But last tidbit I'll say about Serrano is that she threw 120 punches in one round, and remember, 2 minute rounds, not three. In 120 seconds, she threw 120 punches. So yes, simple math. I know y'all all know in the audience, but one punch per second for the whole round. Not just on a heavy bag, with someone else, with a world class fighter coming at you too. So I think that just speaks to just the greatness of her and just the greatness of all the women on this list too, without a doubt.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest with you, bro. And I know people might think we're saying this just because, but I'll be honest, man. Some of these women fights have been more exciting than a lot of these guys we've
Hmm.
been watching, right? A lot of these prospects, these blue chip guys that are supposed to be next, I see them get in there and I see them phone it in, or I see them get in there and it looks like they haven't worked on shit. You know what I mean? But then you see these girls get in there and you see the difference between, one fight where they might have been off, whatever it was that needed to be fixed, got fixed. Whatever, they were so much better than the last time out. And no one in the female division is phoning in any performance, no matter who they're fighting. They're all going balls to the wall. So, I really do want to give a lot of respect to the women's division because they've come so far, brother. The talent is ridiculous nowadays.
No, it is for sure. And I'll let you start with the men's side. I did started with the women's side. So if there's any honorable
Yes, sir.
mentions you want, if not, let's get it. 10-5. Men's pound for pound list, catch and counter edition.
I got no honorable mention for these
Mhm.
dudes. Fuck them. But my number 10, and this is the only thing I'm going to say about this is I didn't have him on my list until this morning. Um, and I'm not even going to mention who I had in his place. And I know a lot of people got him much higher. I know a lot of people are going to give me shit for the way I got this list ordered, but just fuck with me for a minute. At number 10, I got Devin Haney. And the reason I have him at number 10 and not higher is because I think had he fought Tszyu when he was healthy, not the Tszyu that fought Kambosos. We all know that story now. Kambosos or Tszyu was literally should have never even been in that fight with his medical issue. I think if he'd have fought that version of Tszyu healthy, he loses. I think he loses to Shakur. I think he loses to Tank. So even though he's got the belts and he's moving up to fight Prograis and he's doing good things, hats off to him. He got a decision against Lomachenko. You have to take your hat off to him, but I still think that there are better people in his division, so I can't put him higher than them, and that's why I have him at number 10. I got Tszyu at number 9, and again, the only reason I don't have him higher is because I want to see what he does next, right? I think Tszyu is back to form, but I want to see him string it together. Like he had a couple of fights he actually won, but he looked a little rusty, right? He had some personal issues he was dealing with, might have still been, not as trusting in his body after those medical issues. I think he's past that now. I think he's a top 5 talent. I want to see him now in his next fight prove it to me. I got Shakur at number 8, and the only reason I got him at number 8 is because he hasn't had his next fight yet. I think after this next fight and he gets that belt, I'll probably have him, in my top 5. I think the world of Shakur Stevenson. I think that on pure talent alone, this dude, we're going to be putting him, and top 10 greatest of all time at one point in his career, later on down the line. But, again, he's still a little bit early. I still think he's second in his division to Tank, but I think that, until they fight each other, you know what I mean? Until they fight each other, prove me right or wrong. I think that's where he is. I know a lot of people aren't going to like this. A lot of people will probably have to Google who this dude is. But I got Navarrete at number 7. And I don't feel like I should have to, say anything about it. But look, the dude's a multiple division champion. And he just got done wiping the floor with Valdez, who most people, respect and, prior to the Shakur fight, thought worlds of. Navarrete, when you look at his resume, it's just as impressive as just about anybody in the top 10, right? There's not really too many people you can look at their resume and go, oh, that's so much better than his. So I got him at number 7. And then to round out my bottom 5, I don't usually put heavyweights in pound for pound lists. I actually have 2 on my pound for pound list this time. And the reason this guy's on there is strictly because of how dominant I think he is, the best heavyweight, period, right now. I think he's the best heavyweight in our generation that isn't named Klitschko, and that's Tyson Fury. That's my 10 through 6, Jack. What you got?
There we go. So I'll throw out a few honorable mentions. I'll be nice to them. I mean, they didn't make the cut, but I'll give them a little shine. So I do have Artur Beterbiev, somebody who I had as high as like number 5 once upon a time, but just inactivity, a lot of injuries, and then when you fight as inactive as he does, each performance matters that much more. So it's cool. He got the knockout over Anthony Yard, but to me, that wasn't a pound for pound performance. Still the honorable mention, still right there. If he beats Callum Smith, if he were to beat Bivol, then he's back in the top 5 area. So he's right around there still too. Errol Spence, it kills me to not have him on this pound for pound list, but I'm just not sure. It's a tough loss, and he lost to a guy who I'm gonna have. I'll say it right now, number 1. I'm not to like, reveal anything else, but he lost to the number 1 guy. But I just wonder if we can see the old Errol Spence before that. I think he's still a top 10 pound for pound guy, one of my favorite fighters. I just wonder how much of that he has left after a performance like that. Maybe we see a rejuvenated him at 54, but that's to be determined. Jermell Charlo is another guy who killed me. It killed me to take him off this list, especially because he's still a unified world champion at 154. He's still the guy at 154. And just whereas he moved up 2 weight classes and lost to Canelo. So even to play devil's advocate, let's say if Tank Davis moves up 2 weight classes to lose to Crawford, well, that wouldn't really hurt his pound for pound stock either. For me, it was kind of just the way that performance went. And just even with Jermell, I wonder, so is he back at 154? Does he go to 60? So right on the edge still. It kills me to take him off this list right there still. And all these guys have the chance with another big win to get right back in there. Then Lomachenko is another guy who I
want
right
to
on
say
the
something really quick to you.
Yes, sir.
I want to say something to you, to that, right? To your point, before you get into your top 10, your honorable mentions are probably on a lot of other people's top 10s, bro. And to me, yeah, right. I think it does not just how you win or what your record is, but it's also how you lose. Spence got his ass whipped. Charlo got his ass whipped. Beterbiev, even though he's still undefeated, the inactivity, right? We take all of that into consideration. So for everybody who might be coming at us for our list, right, or have smoke for us about where we place guys, take all of that into consideration. And trust me, there are people on my list that I'm a huge fan of that are lower or not even on the list. So I just wanted to point that out before you go. Sorry.
No. You good. And I'll say this too, just like the women's side, there's about 18 or 19 guys that have pound for pound top 10 ability in a resume. So it gets nitpicky at times. We're not belittling, saying, oh, this fighter is garbage, anything like that. They're still in an argument for one of the top 10 boxers on planet Earth at this moment. So they're all, and that's why I want to still give them shine in the just in the honorable mentions list. So Lomachenko's up there too. Competitive fights with 2 top 10 guys who I have. Didn't get to decisions, but he's around. He's got the losses. Not a top 10 guy for me, but he's still in the ballpark. And then Kazuto Ioka is up there. I mean, Juan Estrada is up there. Navarrete, Ribesi Ramirez. There's a ton of different guys. The winner of Demetrius Andrade and Benavidez being there too. So just speaks to just how many, just the talent pool that we're working with too. So you might not have the same top 10 as us, but I guarantee out of those 18 names I just listed, Kenshiro Taraji is another one from Japan. You'll have those guys all in your top 10, just depending on the order. So my number 10, a name that some people might not know. I have him higher than the rest of the guys besides Inoue in the lower weight classes. And even though he doesn't have the resume, I'll explain why right now. Because I'm still somebody who leans. The tiebreaker for me, it goes ability and what I can see over the resume. Comparing opponents and who I think at this moment is a better fighter. I got Junto Nakatani at number 10. I haven't seen a major outlet with him in the pound for pound list. I'm not sure if that's because of his fights are early in the morning on weekdays. People don't get to normally see him, but he, to me, is an absolute problem and will be much higher on this list. in the coming year. So I think I will be proven right on this going forward. Estrada and Ioka, they're going to be fighting, I believe, and they're two people who would be higher up on this list. But I even look at with Junto, just what he's done to guys who have been competitive with those other guys. So Joshua Franco was a world champion. He had a draw with Ioka and then lost against Ioka, but he had great fight. He had a trilogy with Andrew Maloney. Junto Nakatani fights Andrew Maloney, and he just tears him up. Andrew Maloney's a very good fighter, and that is a performance, especially the finish, will be in our awards also. So I just think that Nakatani with that. Arhi Cortez was in a great fight with Estrada last year. So what does Nakatani do? He fights him and he whitewashes him. So to me, just the skills that he have cannot be denied. And if he gets in the ring with the Iokas or the Estradas, I believe he will beat those guys. And in due time, he will be in everybody's top 10 pound for pound list. My number 9 is Teofimo Lopez. And I do want to bring up comment right here. So he says that Devin beats any version of Teofimo, in my opinion. And I think a lot of the stylistical qualities I would tend to agree with for that. I think with Teofimo, I think that he's always going to struggle with boxers or with guys that make him step to them. I think he's at his best when he's a counter puncher. We saw that against Lomachenko, and we also saw that against Josh Taylor. After the Kambosos loss, he was out of my list. Wasn't sure, and then he was out of my list until the Taylor fight, just because, as you said when you had spoke on him, we weren't sure what version of Tia we were going to get. Kambosos version, he had a lot of health things, but still, that was still a loss. And stylistically, he didn't fight the way he should have to get to taking care of business in that fight, especially early on. He had the Pedro Campa fight. He had the Sandor Martin fight and didn't look like a pound-for-pound fighter in those fights. But, oh, boy, against Josh Taylor, did he ever look like a pound-for-pound fighter, and that's for sure. This is where it comes down to, I'll come out and say it, I'm not a huge fan of some of the comments Teofimo's made outside of the ring on some of those other things, but his skills can't be denied, and he is number 9 on my pound-for-pound list. Number 8, I have Shakur Stevenson. He's going to be fighting. He's going to be looking to become a 3-division world champion coming up. His skills can't be denied either. I mean, he's got the wins over Jamel Herring. He's got the win over Joet Gonzalez. He's got the win over Oscar Valdez for the lineal and the unified championship of the world. He's someone, as you said, will continue to rise higher up on this list. Number 7, I have Gervonta Davis on this list. I know a lot of people don't have him in their top 10 pound for pound, but he has a few. I think he has an underrated resume in the sport right now. A lot of people say that he hasn't fought anybody, and just because he hasn't fought the guys we want to see him fight, he's got a lot of solid wins on there. He beat Jose Pedraza when Pedraza was undefeated. He knocked Pedraza out, and Pedraza's been in competitive fights ever since then. The Leo Santa Cruz, I know Leo Santa Cruz is moving up in weight, but my God, how he knocked out Leo Santa Cruz, the way he set that shot up, the punch placement, all those things. And another win that at the time wasn't looked at as a great win, but especially pound for pound, we're talking about weight class wise. How about his win over Mario Barrios? Look how that's aging now. He has a win over somebody who's going to be a legit welterweight champion, and he's a lightweight now. He moved up to 40 for that fight, and at the time, people were like, oh, well, who's Barrios? Well, we've seen now who Mario Barrios is, and I think that win kind of helps me place Tank where I have him. And then I have number 6, Devin Haney. And I will just say, so Devin Haney, Tank Davis, Shakur Stevenson, Teofimo Lopez. Same thing we said for the women. You can put all those names in a hat, mix them up, and almost put them in whatever order you want. But to me, Devin Haney he's the undisputed lightweight champion of the world. He did. Teofimo lost to Kambosos, so he beat Kambosos. He did what Teo couldn't, and I know there were health things and things like that. I do think with a lot of people saying Shakur beats Devin. I think at 135 right now, I would take Shakur to beat Devin. But I also don't think that Devin is at his best at 135 right now. I think if that fight happens at 140 or even 147, I think you'll see that be a more real 50-50 fight. I think Devin's been killing himself to make weight at 135, and we'll see a better version of him coming up. So people kind of not criticize, but another thing which is funny, a lot of people were saying, oh, Kambosos, he's going to Australia. Devin might get robbed. Kambosos, this and that. All the ones who are hyping up Kambosos are now saying, well, all you beat was Kambosos. Well, I'm like, well, if you were picking Kambosos to win or to rob Devin or this and that, he's going to hit him like Linares did. None of that happened. Devin won arguably every round in both those fights. And then what does he do after that? He says, okay, you guys weren't psyched with that fight. I'll go fight the guy that you guys think is the guy in Lomachenko. He won. I thought he could have edged a very close fight in that fight, and he was the rightful winner in that fight. And doing pound for pound things, he's now going to move up and fight Regis Prograis, another guy who could be an honorable mention. And so that's straight up pound for pound business, I think, from him. I also think that we're going to see a better version of him. I think that his prime could actually even be at welterweight at 147. I think Devin's about 5'9". He's got a 72-inch reach. So I think that the more he fills out, people look at 140 and say, oh, he might have trouble with those bigger guys at 140. He might. He's fighting bigger guys, but he's going to be a bigger, stronger, and better version of himself moving up also. So that's why I have him at number 6. But as I said, those guys, you can kind of all throw them in a hat and pick out whoever you want. But that's how I have them in order at this moment. So top 5 time, Nibs.
Yeah,
See
I
what you
mean,
got.
look, with the Haney pick, I just want to say this really, really quickly, right? I got him at number 10. You got him at number 6.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what I'm telling people. If he goes in here and beats Prograis in a similar fashion of the way he beat Kambosos, or he beats him out the way he did Lomachenko, he ekes out another victory there. He's definitely in my top 5 at that point, because then he's moved up, right? And he's beating a guy that I think is actually going to knock him the fuck out. So,
Mm-hmm.
the, the and again, we go over these guys' resumes for a reason, right? To show you guys, look, there's a very thin line for me. Pretty much anybody 4 through 10. There's a very thin line between who's 4 and 10. So even though I might have Devin Haney as number 10 and I got Fury as number 6, I'm saying that's just me. That's my personal preference.
Mm-hmm.
But to be honest with you, if you had Devin Haney at number 6, Fury not even on your list, I'm not mad at you. If you have Shakur, higher than what I have him, I'm not mad at you. If you got Tszyu higher, because look, I completely understand. It's very thin for me, the difference between these guys, and even the guys that just didn't make the list. It's very thin. So I get it, and I respect it. Jack's a genius. Pay attention.
And I guess one thing I should have led with too is that I don't have Tyson Fury on my list just because I don't. I'm one of those old kind of stick guys. I stick with my things. I'm kind of stubborn this way, but I don't believe in having heavyweights on the pound for pound list. Now I will have one heavyweight who wasn't always a heavyweight, multi-division champion. So that's what the key is for him. But Fury definitely has pound for pound level skills. I won't take that away. Just for me, it's kind of hard because he's 270 something pounds. So the Wilder wins are fantastic wins, but he's also 50 pounds bigger. So the skill set is without a doubt pound for pound. It's just hard for me to contextualize that compared to these other guys who are fighting guys exactly their weight, or even guys who are bigger than them. But the skills are without a doubt pound for pound. People even have him as high as number 3 or 4 pound for pound, and I can't even say there's anything wrong with that either.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at it, Fury, right? and the reason I want to talk about this a little bit before I move on is the last time we saw a heavyweight with these kind of skills was, or even close to it, was Muhammad Ali. Now, I'm not saying Fury is Muhammad Ali. Let's be very clear. But when you think about it, most heavyweights before this were the same. Super athletic guys. Most of them could just punch hard as shit. But you didn't get guys that can move, and his defense is ridiculous. People think they give him credit for that. I mean, the way he moves, right? But then, his chin is ridiculous. There's no one else in the heavyweight division, in my opinion, that can get up 4 times from a Deontay Wilder right hand and live to tell about it. You know what I'm saying? Everybody else that is getting, and let's be real clear, Deontay Wilder caught him with 4 Sunday punches, bro. And this dude got back up. That first fight, when he got up from that one, albeit, 15 seconds later, but, I digress. But, anybody else, that fight's over. Period. That fight is, if Deontay Wilder cracks Usyk with that, if he cracks Big Bang Zhang or Anthony Joshua's career might be over if he got cracked with that punch. You know what I'm saying? So the fact that he has that skill, for me, it's like, how can I not put the motherfucker on the list? Like, but because I do understand, and again, it's hard for me to put heavyweights on the fucking list because of what we talk about. But for me, that pretty much almost solely on that alone, I got to put him on there, bro. Because think about it. There's no one in the heavyweight. Just you say that you can hear Deontay Wilder's right hand when it lands audibly. like it's in a movie. You can hear it when you watch it. And he got up 4 times. All right, he gets the list for me. I'm gonna get
Real
into my
quick,
top 5, Jack.
real quick before
Yeah,
you do
go
that,
ahead.
because once you get going, I want you to get cooking for sure. But just one comment about from Joshua Corrales is, I guess he's saying, is Devin avoid Shakur. 2 things I want to say on that. One is that, first of all, he had all the belts and he was the undisputed champion. So Shakur, rightfully so, does want the shot. But Shakur is also not in the position to dictate terms or to pick shots or anything like that. Devin was, Devin had more leverage when he fought Kambosos than Shakur might even now, because Devin had a part of the belt and Kambosos wasn't nearly the draw that Devin is at this moment. Devin took 20%, even less than that, went to Australia twice to get it done. And if you guys, a lot of people believe Shakur beats Devin, and I'll say it, it's easy for me to say because it ain't my money, but all these people that are so confident Devin washes Devin, Shakur says, oh, I'm levels above him. All right. If you took that 25%, you could have went out, you could have absolutely washed Devin. Then you would have been the undisputed champion. You would have been higher on the pound for pound list and all these kind of things. So it's a very tricky topic. And then Devin's also, it's tough to say he's avoiding Shakur because, who is he fighting? Oh, he's fighting the Regis Prograis, a guy who a lot of people think can knock him out. So to me, it's tough to kind of avoid someone when you're moving up to fight a champion, but also if you're Shakur, tough to kind of dictate terms when you were the challenger trying to fight the undisputed champion. If you were that confident, which I still believe he was that confident, I can see why he didn't take the 25%. But all these people saying, oh, he beats him that easily. Well, he could have taken the 25% and done that. So at this point, it's still to be determined for me. But if you want to have Shakur higher than Devin, that's cool with me. I have Devin higher at the moment, though. Just wanted to address that. But now, what was yours?
Now, I was going to say, I think you're 100% correct. I think outside of Tank, right, who doesn't even need belts. Like Tank's in rarefied air right now. He doesn't need belts. Like, he I've said this a million times just because of how ridiculous it is. He's the only person who's been able to do this, by the way. This motherfucker got Madonna to come watch him. You know what I mean? And she doesn't come out, period. Like, she doesn't go outside. So Tank is the biggest draw. So Tank is the A side no matter how many fucking belts you have, right? But when you're Devin Haney and you've got all 4 belts, anybody not named Tank can kiss your ass because you get to dictate, hey, these are the terms. This is going to be the purse bid. This is going to be the location. When you're the A side, you get that respect, right? I say this all the time. When Floyd wanted to be the man, he had to go up and fight De La Hoya. Guess what? He had to concede a lot of shit that almost sounds ridiculous now knowing who he became, right? But you look at it, recently, Canelo lost to Bivol, but he's still the fucking A side. Bivol loses out on making millions more money because he says, oh, well, I beat you. Now I get to dictate what happens. No, you don't. You in boxing, guys have to understand who the A side and B sides really are, bro. You can fight Canelo right now and beat him. And in the rematch, you're still going to be the B side. Why? Because without Canelo, the boxing match does nothing, right? If you are one of these guys that isn't on that level, right? Let's say you're not on a Canelo, you're not on a Tank level or a Bud level at this point with his fight, or even the Furious guys, right? People are going to show up for these guys. If you're on that Stevenson, Haney, Tszyu level, right? The guy with all the belts gets to tell you what the fuck to do. Period. You ain't gotta like it. It just is what it is. Jamel Charlo had all the belts at 154. Guess what? He got to tell everybody what the fuck to do, didn't he? It's the way
Yeah.
it works, bro. So anybody who says he's ducking him, I don't necessarily know that he's ducking him, but he's saying, hey, you want to fight me? This is what you got to do. If you really want that smoke, you got to do it.
Yep. And this isn't to you guys in the chat because you guys aren't going this far and saying this, but I have seen people say similar things too. It's funny that when Kambosos was making all these crazy demands, no one was, I don't know what it was. Nobody was saying, oh, Devin should get this or Devin should get it. They were saying, take your ass to Australia, not once, but twice, and hopefully you don't get robbed. And they're saying, if you do, tough luck. So at the end of the day, he took concessions. He did that. And it's also funny because I don't blame Shakur for the Frank Martin fight falling out, but kind of did the same thing to Frank Martin where he said, I don't know about this whole money thing. So Again, no shade on Shakur for that though. Real talk. That obviously other things led to that, but just wanted to address that real quick. But as you continue,
Frank Martin fumbled the tricker's money. I don't know what the fuck he was doing. But
that's for sure.
To your point, Devin did it twice. He did it after he became the champ. He didn't have to do shit that Kambosos wanted, and he did it fucking again. So, now granted, he knew he was going to wipe the floor with the boy. That's a whole different. So people are going to take that into consideration. Oh, well, he did that because he knew he was going to win. Well, guess what? If you're Shakur and you think you're going to win, if you think you're going to beat, it's easy the way you're talking, do it. Floyd had to. Manny had to do it with Floyd later. Jamel had to do it when he wanted to come up to fight Canelo. Bivol had to do it the first time they fought, right? He ended up winning that fight. Anytime you're not the A side, and it's hard for a lot of guys to not recognize that they aren't. You have to make those concessions. Period. But I still don't have Haney higher than 10 because I still think there are people that can beat him that are on my pound for pound list. Like you said, my thing is this: I don't even have you as the number one guy in your division, even though you got all the belts, because I think, or I almost know, I'm almost willing to guarantee. I bet my salary that if you fought Tank or Shakur, they'd both beat you. You know what I mean? Now I got a coin flip between Shakur and Tank. Like if they fight, I don't know. I can't call that one. I just have to watch and be a fan. I wouldn't even bet money on that. But I'm here to tell you, I think both of them can beat him. I'm not saying it's easy, right? But I think they can both have an avenue to beat you. So for me, that's why I don't have him higher. It's because I got other guys higher than him on the list.
Yeah, let's get into it. The people, this is what the people have been waiting for. They've been waiting this long. All the fans been going crazy, asking me about Nibs' top pound for pound list. Well, here we are, y'all. So take the floor away. 5-2-1.
Starting with numero cinco. We just talked about him. I got two heavyweights on this list. He's the second one. The only reason I have him above Fury, even though I think Fury is the number one in the division, is I think that Usyk is the better all-around fighter. I think he's the more pound-for-pound guy because he did come from cruiserweight. He was the man at cruiserweight. Cleared out the division. There's no qualms about it. He was the dude at cruiserweight. He comes up, and guess what? He's proven to be, if not the man, one of the best fighters in that division also. Pretty much anybody not named Wilder, you think he has a chance to win against. So for me, Usyk is number 5 because of the climb in the weight class and surprisingly how easily he's been beating guys much bigger than him. For all the limitations that Anthony Joshua might have, he's huge compared to Usyk, and Usyk was able to box circles around him. So he's very impressive. I think, again, even in a fight against Fury, you have to give him a chance to win no matter what you think of Fury. And I think Fury's a generational talent, right? But Usyk has proven to be a generational talent and 2 different weight classes. You got to put him in there. I think I'm with you. I think, Bernie. Yeah, I mean, Hybrid 25, I'm with you, bro. But again, we don't find out. We won't find out until those guys get in the ring. You know what I mean? These are all hypotheticals at this point. Just going off the eye test. But again, you can't take anything away from Devin because he's fighting the guys. He's fighting. Number 4, I just talked about him. I got Tank at number 4. And I know a lot of people have a problem are going to have a problem with me having a number as high as I do. A lot of people try to poke holes at his resume. And my thing is this. He was fighting world champions early in his career. He knocked out, and he's knocking them out. He's not just beating these guys, right? Where you could say, oh, well, Tank barely beat this guy and got a split decision. Nah, he knocked his ass the fuck out. He knocked out Barrios at 140. And again, like you said earlier, that's looking a lot better now after that Ugas fight, right? Because Barrios put them paws on Ugas, right? And again, you look at not for me, it's not just are you winning, it's how you win. He's got what all but two of his fights ended in knockout, and I think he'd have knocked out Cruz if he hadn't taken that on short notice and hadn't hurt his hand. You know what I mean? Let's be real clear. So he's got one of the best knockout percentages, and he's never I've never really watched a Tank fight and go, oh shit, he might be in some trouble. Oh no, the guy, nah, he looks like he's in control the whole time. Rolly had some success early on, and then you saw what happened to him. He got put to sleep. So, and he's not just stopping guys on their feet. He's putting people up, like you said, that Leo Santa Cruz uppercut. Good Lord, bro. that was a thing of beauty. Number 3, I mean, and then before I get into my top 3, I just want to say this. I don't give a fuck what order you have these 3 guys in, but they should be the top 3, in my opinion. I got Canelo at number 3. And I think Canelo has bounced back. I think he's proven, after the Charlo fight, there's levels to this game, right? I know Charlo moved up 2 weight classes, but he was an undisputed guy at his weight class. He's taller. He's got the dimensions. He's got a particular skill set that should have given Canelo much more problems than they did. But I think people find out real quick, Canelo hits different. And Canelo's chin is different. You're not hurting him. You know what I mean? Have you seen the boy's neck? Me either, because it doesn't exist. The motherfucker is got a concrete neck and chin area. So it's very hard to hurt him. He was up there fighting Bivol, and even though he got dominated against a bigger guy, there was never really a time where I go, oh, well, he's going to get him out of there. He takes punches with the best of them, and again, he hits differently, and his boxing skill and IQ are ridiculous, right? I think we, again, not to keep putting it out there, but after the Floyd fight, you saw his boxing IQ grow exponentially. I mean, his defense became better. His footwork became miles right. My God, bro. And I think the leverage he gets on his punches, not just the pure natural power that he has, but the quickness and the leverage he gets into those that makes his power even more powerful than it was before. I think really this version of Canelo right now, you'd be hard pressed to find anybody in or around his weight class that can beat him, bro. And he's got options. He can pretty much fight anybody he fucking wants. Number 2, I had him at number 1 for like 5 seconds. And then the guy I got number 1 came in and said, hold my beer. Anyway, I mean, good Lord, bro. The man's nickname is probably the most. It's the best nickname. He's a monster. He really is. I mean, in every weight class he's fought in, there's really not been anybody close to him. I mean, he's walked. I mean, again, it's not just that he's beating people. He's walking through these people. I thought Stephen Fulton had a chance because Stephen Fulton, to me, was the man in his division. I didn't think there was anybody in or around the division that was going to beat him. Anyway, comes in and says, "Yeah, okay," and he made it look easy. He was a better boxer. His footwork was better. His power is unparalleled. I think at the lower weight classes. I think he probably won't get a test until he gets up to 126, maybe even 130 if he wants to go that high. And I think again, he can do whatever the fuck he wants to anybody that's getting in that ring, in or around his size. Period. To me, the only thing that keeps Inoue from being number 1 is the fact that Terrence Bud Crawford went in there and absolutely destroyed. You got it right behind you. He absolutely destroyed Errol Spence, who to me was the number 1 guy in the division by a mile. Even though I had Bud winning, I said, yeah, but Spence has been kicking everybody's ass, bro. This ain't gonna be easy. I thought it was gonna be a decision. My Lord, he made Errol Spence look like an amateur. That's how bad it was, you know. And then walked out with a clean face, not a mark on him. Looked like he could have fought another fight. And again, he's climbed weight classes. He's done this. He's been impressive. He's fought in bigger guys his whole career. and he's made them all look regular. Terrence Bud Crawford, Inoue, Canelo, my top three. I don't give a shit what order you have them in. They better be there.
Well, sorry to let you know, but they won't all be there. They'll all be in my top 5, but I got a little different of an order. So we have disagreement on one little thing. And a lot of people, this will be kind of a hot take by me. I think a lot of people don't have the certain order I do. 1 and 2 were kind of, as B. Brown said in the comment, kind of like a 1A and 1B thing. So, I mean, I think that if someone were to say, in a way, number 1, cool. Bud number 1, cool also. So kind of more like a 1A and 1B there. But my number 5 is Alexander Usyk. Undisputed cruiserweight champion, now unified heavyweight world champion. And he's now going to fight Tyson Fury. And if he beats Tyson Fury, he puts himself, which I don't think he does. I think Fury just I think that's where size becomes too much for him. But if he beats Fury, especially on a pound for pound with the size difference between those two dudes, you might have a 1A, 1B, 1A, and 1C. And then even a 1D. It's like it could be those guys. He'll be right up with those other top guys. So his resume speaks for itself. He cleaned out cruiserweight. Cruiserweight hasn't been a great division. But when he was in there, he beat some good guys. He beat Gassiev. He beat Briedis. He beat Marco Huck. Guys who were pretty good names at that time. They're undefeated world champions. And besides the Briedis fight, they were all relatively easy work besides that. He went up. He beat AJ. So I got him at number 5. And if people want to have him at 4 or have him at 3, I'm cool with that too. 3 for 5 or 3 to 5 or almost kind of whatever order you want. Now, number 4. He's even on my shirt here. He's, man, right there. We got Saul Canelo Alvarez. Someone who, as B. Brown said, he was more kind of towards the bottom of my top 10 before this fight. I can't lie. After the Bivol fight, after the Golovkin and the Ryder fights, I just wasn't sure if he lost a bit on his fastball. The injuries, just the fights were catching up. He's got 60-something pro fights too, though that will catch up eventually. But I know he beat a guy 2 weight classes lower than him. But as you said, it's not just that he beat Jermel, it's how he beat him. And he looked like he was the Canelo of old before, not an old Canelo, the old Canelo. So I just put him right back around where I had him before. I've never, even when he was at the peak of his powers, I never had him number 1 pound for pound, just because the guy who I had number 1, which was a bold take once upon a time, I always thought he was the best fighter in the world, especially back at that time. I had him number 1 still, and he's still number 1 to this day. But Canelo is still a world-class fighter. I got him number 4 pound for pound. But here's where it gets interesting, because my number 3 pound for pound is going to piss a lot of people off. But it's all good because I got an explanation for it. And if it piss you off, I'm sorry, nothing I can do about it. But it is Dmitry Bivol. This is the one thing, the argument that people can make about it. And this is a fair argument. You could say his only real pound for pound level win is Canelo. And he thought Canelo was a smaller guy moving up in weight. All that is true. The one thing I will pose to those same people, because that's a very fair argument to make, is then they were talking about the fight going down to 168. If Bivol moved down to 68, which is Canelo's weight class, would you have then picked Canelo to win the fight? And if you say yes, and I say, okay, that's fair. But I don't think Bivol he didn't beat Canelo. Now, if he beat Canelo and he just roughed him up on the inside and he was just bigger, stronger, just using his weight to his advantage, pushing him, doing all those things, it'd be harder for me to have him here. But he just beat him because it was pure boxing. The pure boxing, kind of like our show, Catching Kind of, Canelo was throwing those arm shots. Boom, catch it. Boom, here's the hooker. Boom, here's the 1-2-1. All those pure skills where I think that even if they were both the same exact weight, and even on fight night, they were relatively the same weight. I know it's not Canelo's best weight, but I think had they fought at 168, I still would have picked Bivol to win. So that's why I do have him at number 3. But in activity, he hasn't fought in a bit. I know he's got, I think, a domestic thing potentially going on. He might be falling out of this list real soon for a number of those things. So we got to get a damn fight. And first of all, we got to make sure I don't know the details behind the domestic thing. They got to get behind that settled out of the way first, because if he's guilty at all for that, that will clearly, and rightfully so, would hinder his chances of getting a fight and being on the pound for pound list. I mean, do I even really need to go over these last 2 guys? I will anyways. I got them both up there. I got the for the fights and for the events, because there was fights between great fighters to determine all-time great fighters. But damn, like you said, did they make those great fighters look like average fighters? Stephen Fulton, somebody who was an honorable mention on my pound for pound list before, as he was in a lot of people's top 10s. I had him in that 12 to 15 range. He was the man. He wasn't the full undisputed champion, but he was the undisputed man of the division, unified champion. He had beat Figueroa, he beat Angelo Leo, he beat Daniel Roman. We were on here. We both picked Inoue to win. We both picked him to maybe stop Fulton late, but we never thought that Fulton would not win more than 10 seconds of that fight. Inoue was talked about as, oh, he's a big puncher, but his, just like kind of Tank and just like a better BF, but even more so with him, his boxing skills get very underrated. The way he was sticking that jab to the body of Fulton, right, kind of like Floyd did against Diego Corrales too, round after round after round. And now Floyd, then he threw the jab to the downstairs, and he came up with the hook upstairs on Corrales. That's what he was doing throughout that fight. Inoue, jab to the body, jabs to the body, combination here and there. And in that 8th round, jab to the body, and boom, that right hand over the top. And Fulton was never going to be able to recover from that. So Fulton's one of my favorite fighters too. So it hurt. It pained me to see it in that moment. But also I was like, God damn, this dude is good. So to me, I'll call him number 2, but it's more like he's 1B on my list if I'm being completely real. And the 1A or the number 1, it's Terrence Bud Crawford at the end of the day. Come on now. I'm going to be one of those people. I'll say I picked Spence to beat him. I thought it was a 51-49 kind of fight, but I thought Spence being the bigger, more natural welterweight, I thought him being more active, I thought the activity would make a difference, but I always was worried about the counter punching of Terrence. And that's why I even made a bit of money, because I actually bet on Terrence for a late stoppage in that fight, because you could kind of see that being a possibility too. But Bud just has it all. I mean, he can do, if he needed to be on his toes and box, he could do that. If he slugs it out with you in the mid-range, he can do that. His punch selection, like I said, the adaptability and the counter punching to me is what separates him. Just all worldly. He can go into a fight without a game plan, and he can figure it out round by round and get it done. So he established himself not only when that win over Spence as a modern great, but to me as an all-time great, as Inoue did against Fulton. And you can say Sugar Ray Leonard beats him. You can say Floyd beats him. You can say Tommy Hearns beats him. But you can't say that too confidently. And I'm not even saying I would pick Bud to beat all those guys. But none of those are locks, and he is in a competitive fight with anybody all time at 140, 147 in that range. So at the end of the day, Terrence Bud Crawford is my number 1, and Inoue is my number 2.
I got a question for you, Jack. And hey, the Bivol thing, but great list. I mean, you look, again, we're splitting hairs. And again, I said this before. There are a couple of guys that didn't make my list. They didn't make my list. There are 2 guys who didn't make my list on a coin flip. You know what I mean? There's the rest of the guys is just really close. We talk, potential super fights. We fantasize, if this guy were this weight class, how would that work out? We did it earlier with, Serrano and Clarissa. Like, hey, if they're top 2 in that pound for pound. If the top 2 pound for pound men, Bud and Inoue, we're in the same weight class.
Oh my goodness. I mean, I guess, well, yeah, with me, I tip my hat because I always say that's always my tiebreaker. So, I mean, damn, could I even pick against Inoue? But I just think Bud's intangibles, but Inoue has the same damn intangibles too. But I think the counter punching of Terrence, his punch placement, and him being able to switch stances is probably what make him a tiny hair ahead of Inoue. But I mean, goddamn, it's not like I could say, oh, he definitely wins that. Inoue would have. But to me, it would be the switching stance ability, and then the counter punching, the adaptability between rounds would probably be it for Terrence. But not like Inoue can't do all those things besides the switch stances too. And I bet he could switch stances too. He doesn't need to do it, but if he wanted to, I bet he would be a pretty damn good southpaw also.
Yeah, I mean, even as I was asking you, I'm sitting here going, well, shit, I don't know if there's a right answer. Here's the thing: there's no wrong answer.
Yeah,
if you say Inoue, okay. If you say Bud, okay. I'll say this, and I learned a lesson about betting against Bud, a long time ago. But I'll tell you this, man: the things that I've seen from Inoue are special. I mean, they're special. I tell you this: if that fight were ever to be able to be made, it might go down as the best fight in boxing history. Like that would be, I mean, the skill level between these two, their boxing IQs, their punching power. Both guys could put the other guy to sleep. You know, I mean, damn. You know what I mean? We just talk about Rocky movies. Shit, that would be the creme de la creme. I'd still have to go with Bud though. I think I'd have to go with Bud, just because again he's made me look foolish too many times when I've picked against him, and I promised never to do it again. And then he made me look like a genius when everybody else picks this. So, but I mean, you talk about let's talk about this, right? More realistic fights with these pound for pound guys. We've all got a wish list. What's a wish list fight for you that's realistic that you think can really be made? You'd like to see get made?
So is it two guys on the pound for pound list, or could it be one guy on a pound for pound? And you know what? I'll give you both. I'll cover bases. I'll give you both. This is the cheap answer, but actually no. I'll give a few different fights. One is Devin Haney, Teofimo Lopez at 140. Another one, Tank and Shakur. Yeah, Tank and Shakur at 135. Tank and Shakur at 35 would be my other one. And then Canelo versus the Benavidez Andrade winner. And also throw in there, I don't know how realistic it is, but Canelo and Bud for the hell of it too. But those are the fights. I think Devin and Tszyu would give us a little more clarity on just one of those guys. Like you said, they're in the same conversation. One guy would leapfrog as that top 5 guy. Tank and Shakur, kind of that same thing. They're all on the same levels right now. So one guy would kind of go up. Canelo against Benavidez or Andrade, just because he looked great against Jermell, but he didn't have to get out of his first gear in that fight. And that's the thing I wonder about if he fights at Benavidez, if Benavidez wins, or even Andrade, if Andrade could win, is does he have the ability to up his volume to how it was in the second Golovkin fight, to come on the way he did against Caleb Plant and Billy Joe Saunders that he's shown he can do. So I'm going to give him credit for right now, but I want to see if he can still do those things against those guys, which is a pretty damn good chance he will. But those are kind of just the fights I was looking at for that. And then we're throwing out fun fantasy fights. And if they could ever do it at a catchweight, think about how damn fun Tank and Inoue would be. Not realistic again either, but my goodness, it'd be a fantastic fight. I think Tank Inoue's a little too small, but I mean, holy shit.
Yeah, sign me up, bro. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And here's the thing: even with the size disadvantage, you'd still kind of have to give Inoue a chance right now, like if they were to fight.
Yeah.
I think we're getting one of my fantasy fights because I love heavyweight fights. We're getting Usyk and Fury, right? They've signed that. So after this little bullshit,
they signed, but it should be at this point. Like, let's be real, they should be fighting with the money on the table. I think it does happen. You never know with Tyson, but
to me, that's a fantasy fight because it gives us clarity in the heavyweight division, right? Whoever wins this is the man, period, point blank. I think if Fury wins, he can ride off into the sunset, retire, and he'll be considered one of the greatest, if not the greatest heavyweight, period. Like he can legitimately say that about himself. And I think anyone who's a fan of his can legitimately say it at that point, right? Given his resume. But then you could turn right back around and say the same thing about you. If Usyk wins this fight, hey, why not? Why not me? You know what I mean? I tell you what, though, whoever wins that fight definitely goes up my pound for pound list. Period. Canelo Benavidez. If Canelo can beat Benavidez the way he did Charlo, I might have to put him at the top 2, bro. Like that shit would be some legendary shit. You know what I mean? I mean that a fight between any of these guys, Shakur, Haney, or Tank. Like if any of those dream matchups happen, right? Fuck it. Like, yeah, and then I really do think if Tszyu can beat Haney, I don't know if he cracks the top 5, but I think you got to have him on the cusp because he's beating a world-class guy. And then I mean, Haney's got to get past Prograis first. I'm
the biggest Haney. I'm the biggest Haney guy out there, but that's not. I'd probably pick Devin in a close fight, but that ain't no. I'm surprised at the amount of people are saying that they're counting Regis out. I'm like, well, hold on a second. I mean, I'm drinking the Devin Haney drink all day long, but let's be careful with that one. Another guy who he knows he's got his back against the wall, and he's going to be coming. That's for sure.
You can never count out the Rougarou. And I know people are looking at his last couple of fights and going, well, yeah.
Did that with Loma
he
too,
is
though.
A legit, yeah, he's a legit hitter, and he can box. He's another one of these guys that's heavy-handed, and people forget that he can actually fucking box. So, is he Devin Haney level skill in boxing? No. But Devin Haney better watch for that hook. I'm telling you, it'll be night if he gets caught slipping. But I do think that Haney has a good chance of beating him. But, people just outright disregarding Prograis, that's ridiculous to me.
Yeah.
Be honest with you, bro. You can pretty much give me Bud against anybody at 147, 154, or 160 at this point, and I'd watch that shit, on repeat. Like, I don't think there's anybody at 147 that can beat him.
Well, I don't think so either. But damn, I didn't even think about this. The guy's not on a pound for pound list, but all right, there's one fight I want for Bud, even before Canelo. Bud and Boots Ennis. Now, I'm not like. Then again, I would pick Bud to win that fight. But if there's any young cat out there who's can give Bud a run for his money, I think that is the guy for sure. So that's another fight that I didn't even think about it because we haven't talked about him yet. But oh my goodness, that would absolutely be mentioned along those other ones for sure. And that might be near the top of my list for the fights that I would want to see.
I don't think he's ready. I just think Bud is so much. He's so many levels above everybody else at 147 at this point. I think the only person who had a chance is Spence, and I still think Spence has a legitimate chance at 154 if they can make that fight, right? I think if he's at 154, it gives him a better opportunity. I'm still picking Bud, but I wouldn't be mad at watching that fight at 154. And then why are you bullshitting? Bud could probably go up to 160 right now and beat anybody worth a damn in that division.
Yeah. That's been my talking point for a little bit too. And Hybrid, I missed this comment too, but this is if you guys like the top 10 format, maybe we do some other things like that. He says maybe a top 10 prospect show or other things. So whatever you guys are down for, because listen, you guys are the ones who are interacting with us. So whatever you guys want, things like that, we can definitely work it. I like this. We've never done a top 10 format like this, but I like how it's gone. But another fight I want to throw out, it kind of shows that both guys are in weird spots. They've both been inactive, but another fight that would prove probably top 10 top 5 pound for pound guys, Bivol and Beterbiev. They've been champions. Now, they don't have the same drawing power as a Spencer Crawford or Canelo Benavidez, but I mean, bro, they have been champions in the same weight class, like basically since Andre Ward retired, and they still haven't. Now, I understand Suleiman is doing his thing with because Bivol's from Russia, even though so is Beterbiev, but Beterbiev's Canadian, but Bivol lives in California. So all that's a bunch of just BS to me. So I can see the sanctioning being an issue for that, but that fight has been on the table for years, and that is another fight that kind of even for Bivol, if he doesn't get that fight, could start to slide down my list. It's like we're saying, if these other fights happen and those guys do pick up those wins without a win like that, he might be at a spot where those other guys start to pass him too. So I think that's another fight that both guys have been inactive, but I think that if that fight does happen, it would be another legit pound for pound top guy, the winner too.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say this to Hybrid. I mean, keep a lookout, bro. I mean, we still got the end of the year, awards to hand out later towards the end of the year or early next year. So, it's funny that you mentioned that. Keep fucking with Catch and Counter. We're actually going to be giving you the content you want. Be a little patient. we got it coming. You know what I'm saying? I just want to point out really quick before I make my next point is that these are Catch and Counter top 10 lists, fellas, and they're obviously me and Jack's top 10. This is not the ITR top 10 pound for pound list, which will be coming. We've been told there's going to be a super show coming along, and we'll get everybody's in there. But
now let's be real. Our list is the real list, but I mean we'll give them their credit too. We'll give them a little shine, but we got the real list. But I mean we'll give them their credit too. We'll average them all together, but
we are the authority. So I mean, we're pretty much whatever we say goes. Fuck it. But I'll say this, bro. Like Beterbiev and Yard, that fight to me, I think you could even consider that, a fight of the year candidate. I mean that was they were banging out. And I think Beterbiev is got a style that is more appealing to casual fans, obviously, because he goes in there and fights and he can be hit. Bivol is more the boxer, which not a lot of casual fans are a fan of.
Mm-hmm.
But for everything you just said, like the fight isn't at this point. I don't think the fight's not being made because these guys don't want to fight each other. I think the politics
Mm-hmm.
in boxing, which can be exhausting as fuck.
Yeah,
And I
politics in the
think we
world,
all,
even too. Mm-hmm.
yeah. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
look, I get it. The dude's from Russia. He actually still has a home there, yada, yada, yada.
Mm-hmm.
But it's his family home. Like, you can't
Mm-hmm.
hold that fucking against him.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's not going to get rid of the
No.
home his family has. But he hasn't lived there in fucking years. He's
Mm-hmm.
living in fucking California. He's not in any way, condoning what's going on between Russia and Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
He's actually come out publicly against it.
Mm-hmm.
The same as Beterbiev did. So why are we continuing to hold that against this dude? To me, it sounds like bullshit. Like, let fellas, stop the bullshit. Let these dudes fight and have at it. Maybe one of those Saudi dudes needs to get involved and throw some money at it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we'll finally get it. I think the only reason it's not going to be made is because then Suleiman won't have his strap in there, which is an injustice. But I think it should get made just because, again, clarity and the division. Whoever wins, no matter what belts are attached to it, is clearly the man at 175, which is starting to gain more, a lot more steam now. That 175 used to be a dead division for a while. It's starting to come back and be more exciting. You get more names in there, and these guys are putting on work. And I do think that the Bivol's fight with Canelo has something to do with that. It's attracting more people in eyes to that division. So, hell, they're doing better than 160 is right now.
Yeah, that's what I think everyone basically is. But 160, they'll have a unified champ this weekend. I mean, not many people might know about him, but we'll give them the respect for that. But I think at this point, the awards, instead of just going through them quickly, we'll save them for another episode so we can give you guys kind of like this. If you guys enjoyed it, kind of more of an in-depth thing. We could roll off who we have our number one for each of those things, but I got like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 potential runnings for those things. So there's a lot of people up in the running for those certain awards. So we ain't got to get into that just yet. I think we'll save that for the next episode. But I mean, is there any last? Oh, hold on. There was one other fight that I wanted to mention also for the lower weight classes, and that would be because I kind of touched on it a bit, but actually two more fights. I'm kind of cheating a little bit, but Junto Nakatani, if he's able to fight Estrada, Ioka, or even a Bam Rodriguez, I think that would just further prove my point that he is a pound for pound guy. And I think that it might be a year or two before he gets on the pound for pound list. But y'all heard it here first. And once Junto is on those pound for pound lists, you're gonna be like, oh wow, you know what? Like those guys, they were talking some stuff about him back in the day. And then one other one.
I mean, we know what the fuck we're doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we do. Even like about the Barrios and Ugas thing. I think there were two guys. Was it counter catch a show kind of like that? I think they were picking Barrios to win. I'm not sure, something like that. They picked Barrios to win outright though, and they were pretty damn confident about it.
And I think they actually predicted how it was gonna go.
Yeah, it seems like that way. So we'll give them, whoever they are, credit for them. I mean, but pretty good. It seems like they know some stuff. But another one, fun fight, a guy who I had in my honorable mentions against the guy who's number 2 on my list. Inoue against two guys, actually, Robesi Ramirez and even Inoue against Emmanuel Navarrete. Talk about two different completely styles for Inoue to work with. Robesi, the southpaw, 2-time Olympic gold medalist. Now, I think Inoue has all the boxing in the world too, but that's another fight where I would pick Inoue to win, but you might learn a bit more about him in that fight, fighting a southpaw, a guy. I think Robesi might be too dependent on the left hand to win that fight. He might have to mix some other things up, but that's a great fight. And then, my God, at 130, if you could see Navarrete and Inoue, they're both a top rank. I think it could be a possibility. That's when I would still pick Inoue to win, but that's when you wonder, does the size finally catch up to him? Another great fight that B. Brown mentioned, chat, Oshaki Foster. He's another guy who's teetering on an honorable mention for me, pound for pound list. He's got a fight against Rocky Hernandez coming up. If he wins that fight cleanly, I think he could win that fight. And I'd even bold take. I would actually pick O'Shaquie Foster to beat Navarrete. Also, I think the boxing he does, the discipline he does, looking at how he beat Ray Vargas. Ray Vargas and Navarrete, kind of different styles, but the dimensions are similar. And I think I would like O'Shaquie to win that fight also. But what are your thoughts on those kind of last few fights I throw out there? Are there any other fights you want to kind of throw out before we wrap this thing up?
I want to say this, man. I know I got Navarrete on my list at number 7, but the one of the things that made me a huge fan of his was, and I forget the guy's name. It's gonna hit me, I know, as soon as we get out of here. But he had a fight recently. He was getting knocked around and knocked down.
I can hit you with it. It was Liam Wilson from Australia.
Liam Wilson. Yeah. I don't know why I couldn't think of that right off the tip. But Liam Wilson was looking like a monster against no pun intended, but anyway. But he was looking like a beast against Navarrete, and then Navarrete came back. He gave you the Mickey Ward Arturo Gatti moment, right? Which we all love as boxing fans. We see a guy who looks like he's on his way out of there. I thought he was going to get stopped. Then what does he do? He mounts a comeback and stops the other guy. We rarely see that nowadays because they're so quick to stop fights and save fighters, which they should. But it robs us of those comebacks. And he gave me that comeback moment, and I was like, "Oh my God!" And then his absolute destruction of Valdez, I thought, was a thing of work. It was a work of beauty. And he throws punches in a way that isn't conventional. That uppercut he throws from a mile away, you shouldn't be able to land, but he does, right? And he lands it with power to boot. So I think he can give anybody problems. I think people are sleeping on Foster, though. I've been a fan of his for a while, and I think people are sleeping on him again because he's got some L's on his record. And people incorrectly hold that against boxers, which is retarded to me.
Yeah, especially we got guys on our pound for pound list with multiple L's too, so it just shows that you can be a multiple pound for pound list with some L's in there as long as you make up for it, which O'Shaquie has done also.
And you don't have to be undefeated to be a great fighter. And I think O'Shaquie Foster is on his way there. And I think you're right. I mean, he could give Navarrete some problems and then fuck around and end up on his own pound for pound list at some point. But in a way, Navarrete, bro, that wasn't even on my radar. But now that you say it, because it's a realistic fight.
Yeah, they're both with top rank. He's at 130. If Navarrete stays there, I mean, whew.
I think in a way it wins, but Jesus, would I love to see that. That would be. You talk about some of the good Lord, and then that might be a fight where you might see Inoue get knocked down for the first time, bro. Like that. That's how legit. I think that fight would be. I'll say this: with your lower weight fights, I want people to mark it down on their calendar. Friday the 13th. By the way, happy Friday the 13th to everybody. I hope you got to watch all your Friday the 13th and Jason Voorhees marathons today. Friday the 13th, 2023. You mentioned his name. Ain't nobody else got him on their top 10 with myself. He's going to be a household name. I have him just outside my list, but it's paper thin. I want you to say his name again one more time for me, Jack.
Yeah, Junto Nakatani. Now, I know that some of you guys even listening might not know who he is. I'll just say, just do one thing for me. One thing. You guys, if you listen to us, you're already on YouTube or you're on Facebook or you got social media. You know how those things work. Take that name, type it into YouTube, hit play, and then you'll be like, okay, you know what? Like, I see what you're talking about. That's all. Search up his name and hit play, and y'all find out. I'm putting you guys on, putting you guys onto some game before other people too. So just letting y'all know because soon enough he will be there.
Same time next year, come back.
That's a fact.
We'll look like geniuses. That's all I'm saying. Fact. I don't have him on my top 10, but I'm here to tell you, this guy right here. Like, hold on, this guy right here, one smart motherfucker. Pay attention. Jack, I think you just might be the smartest dude on ITR, bro.
No. I ain't gonna let you do that. All right. No. All I'm saying is I pick Spence to win.
I know I'm damn near the smartest because I pick Book. But
Yeah.
You're usually more right than I am. I just get lucky. I might be
Yeah.
the
Nah.
lucky.
I don't know about that. But even we always joke about getting picks right. But I'll say one thing too, that I actually enjoy getting picks wrong also. Because we're not in the sports to just say, okay, if I picked every single fight right for the whole year, then why would I even watch the fights if you just know what's gonna happen? Yeah, I'll say some crazy ones I picked. Yeah, I thought Tony Harrison had a good chance to beat Tszyu. How'd that turn out? I thought, you know what, Josh Taylor would beat Teofimo, no doubt in my mind. How'd that turn out? I thought Valdez was going to knock out Navarrete. We saw how that turned out too. But that's the beauty of the sport in that you don't always get every pick right. No matter who you are, nobody gets every pick right. And if you did, there's no point in watching the sport. So I think that just speaks to some of the great fights we've been getting to because we have these fights where we're not sure exactly who's going to win each time out. But we do our best to pick the winners still, of course.
One thing I want to tell people, people always ask me, you pick these fights, and especially, and I bring this up a lot because I'm guarantee you I'm probably one of the only people on the planet who said it. When Garcia fought, you know, um, and he won, most Andy Garcia, when he won that fight, I was telling people, Felix will tell you, I'm telling you, bet whatever you got on Andy Garcia. I'm telling you, he's going to beat this dude. People ask me how you do it, and I say, look, you have to take your emotions out of it, right? Like, I knew Canelo was going to win, but I wanted Charlo to win so bad that I said, look, he can. I made excuses of why he can win, right? And that's how you get them wrong. You want somebody to win so bad that you make excuses why the other guy can't win. We all know Canelo was going to win that guy. Fight. I mean, let's be clear. You know what I mean? But then there were the unknowns like Inoue and Fulton. I really did think, shit, Fulton can do it. But you look at what Inoue's done. Just look at the boxing part of it. You go, I can't pick against that guy. You know what I'm saying? It's one of those things where until somebody knocks Tank out, I'm going to be picking him every time he gets in the ring with them. Because unless he gets in there, like you said, against a Bud or he moves up and try to do something super crazy, then there's that. You got guys like Tszyu. I think Tszyu, when he's 100% healthy, is one of the most naturally talented fighters. Period. And he's proven that. So it's one of those things where as long as they, you look at the actual boxing of it and take your emotions out, you probably pick right a good majority of the time. But then we got guys that will come in like Navarrete and just fuck up your night. So you never know.
That's the thing is, any given fight, anything can happen. The Navarrete who was against Liam Wilson is not the same now. He would have been demolished against the Navarrete who fought Valdez. So that's the great thing about all these fights. Even these guys we have on the pound for pound list. Some guys will have great nights. Some guys will have flat nights. But that's how the list is fluid too. This isn't our list going forward. Stamp it for the next 5 years. This list is fluid, and we've already said to you guys, okay, well, if this happens or this guy goes up, this guy goes down. So all of those things can still happen. But I think we basically.
I want people to think Ugas is 2 fights removed from beating Manny Pacquiao, and just got his ass whipped by Mario Barrios.
Shit happens.
Yeah, that just to your point, just to point that out.
Yeah. And even just to go one thing about Junto Nakatani too, but he's 25 years old, so he's young. He's going to keep. He ain't even. If he's in his prime, he's just getting there, so he's going to keep going. I had that in the background. Meant to say it earlier, forgot. Things happen, but I think we basically touched on everything. We're going to have some other interviews up this weekend that I'm going to do. I know Joseph Santos, the son of Bob Santos, and Alberto Ochoa, who he just signed to a managerial deal, we're probably going to have on the channel for an interview just to talk about with Joseph, also just the experiences he's had in boxing and what this partnership means with Ochoa going forward, who he took one of the Kardashians to prom. So, he's got a little clout on his name too, Ochoa does. So it'll be good to get him on our platform. And then on Sunday, I believe, we still got to figure out a time and even a day, but Christine Lopez, who's one of Team USA's coaches, they're in Chile for the Pan American Games. I'm someone who, we don't talk much about amateur boxing on here just because not much has been going on, but the Pan American Games are going to be coming up. We got some really good young USA talent, so I'm going to be on with her probably on Sunday to talk about that because they get into Chile on Saturday also. But I'm going to be at a few amateur shows probably tomorrow. So boxing is what we do. It's what I'm going to do all weekend. So if you guys appreciate this. Keep tuning in. We're going to keep feeding you guys this content. And as Hybrid did, if you guys have suggestions for us, if you're watching back on replay, leave it in the comments, the live chat, or the comments on the regular video. We listen to you guys. We read the comments. We'd like to do our best to kind of keep you guys involved too. So the prospect thing's a good idea. We're definitely going to get to that at some point too. But I think that's about it. So if you want to give your whole spiel real quick, you can definitely do that, because I've been doing that recently. I've been going to some of these shows. I've been to amateur shows, and I will say one thing too is, my goodness, those amateur fights are fun to watch too. I've been seeing them 3 2-minute rounds, and there ain't no feeling out process. You got to get right after it. And I've seen some great fights. Saw a great fight in the crowd too, which that tends to happen also. So we've had great fights in the ring and great fights in the crowd. So that's what happens in these New England shows. About 80% of the shows has fights in the rings and in the crowd, but it's entertainment at the end of the day. So can't be mad at it.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the great thing about supporting local fighters, supporting local fight cards, supporting local fight organizations, right? Promotional companies, etc. You're not just coming out to support the fighters, right? The guys that get into the ring. You're supporting that economy that comes with the local fights, right? The venue, the people who are putting on the concessions, the people who are working security, the people who are working behind the scenes, the cornermen, the ring girls, the announcers, the whole bit kit and caboodle, right? When you're talking local shows, those are usually all local people, with very few, unless you get some boxes from outside the area. But most of the people working that event are people who live in your area. That's their job. That's what I'm saying. Keep supporting those local events. If nobody's showing up, it's very hard to get people to finance having these bigger events in your local area. And I'm here to tell you, the beautiful thing about not only when you go to local events is that they're put on by local people. You also get to see amateur. A lot of these local events, you'll get like 4 or 5, amateur cards most of the time before they get to the pros, right? Jack, you've been to a lot of cards, so you can talk to that as well. Is the last couple of fights that I've been to, there's a whole bunch of amateur guys. I know a lot of people don't get excited about that, but you get excited when you come back in 2 or 3 years and you're like, hey, that guy I saw with the headgear, now he's making his pro debut, right? And he's making his pro debut because he got signed off of an event that you went to, that you supported, that people showed up for. So, and again, those guys that are fighting with those 7-12 records, those guys that are fighting with the 1-0 records, the guys that are, coming from Mexico to make their pro debuts in the US, right? They need us. They need people to give them their start. Even just your local guy. You might have a guy you work with in your day job. You might see him at a local car fighting, right? Go out there, support them. They need it. And again, sometimes not every one of these guys has a big promoter behind them throwing millions of dollars at them where they can not have a day job and do this full time. So they need the local support. Go out there, make sure that you're doing just that. And again, you're not just supporting these fighters, you're supporting your local economy as well. So, Jack, you've been doing a great job. Obviously, we're ICR, we're Catch and Counter, so we do it anyway. But if you're watching us, if you're watching this period, go out and check out some of your local venues. You're helping more than just the guys in the ring.
Without, and then also some of these guys who we've mentioned on pound for pound list, awards, honorable mentions, they've once upon a time were in those exact spots. So it's even great. Like I've been on enough shows now where there are a few different fighters where I've seen every single one of their pro fights, which is pretty cool because you can see them build fight after fight. These guys are around, they're walking around. You can go up to these guys. Sometimes, if they're in the fight, no, but after the fight, a lot of these guys, they're great guys. They enjoy the conversation and they enjoy seeing people who care about their careers and stuff too. So we definitely appreciate that. I appreciate you, Hybrid, for tuning in. Said have a great night. You have a great night also, and catch us every Friday night. We'll be on about 9 Eastern time, 6 Pacific time. Adjust your time zones accordingly to that, but we should be on every Friday now. Shout out to King Felix also. Shout out the entire Arizona boxing community. I'm sure Nibs will second that. So I think that is about it for this episode 10 of Catch and Counter. I am right now going to, without a doubt, go and watch some Colorado Buffaloes football. I know that they're my team right now. Shador Sanders, Travis Hunter's back, so I got to go check out on those guys without a doubt. But
Prime you,
without a doubt. So for the rest of you guys, we salute to y'all. Thank you, and then we will catch you guys next week.
Catch and counter, baby.
Yes, sir.